All right, we wanted, not we, I guess I'm the teacher, I'm the one that wanted. I wanted to show you a video, so please take it in the spirit and what it's intended. If you know this man, he's a televangelist, is what it says on the internet. I'd seen him around. I want to show you something, and then I'm going to comment about it. So please don't just freak out when you see it and just think, what is he teaching us in here? I remember when we talked at the very first week, and I said, what demonic oppression is and is not. We're kind of thinking more along the is not with this video. All right, as I was saying, I'm going to show you a quick video. It kind of falls into the, you'll understand more, but kind of like what demonic oppression is not. So just have to bear with me here for a minute. This is the guy. He calls himself an exorcist, a real exorcist. His name is Bob Larson. Some of you may have heard of him. And I have some opinions and whatever, and I'm going to give it to you here shortly. But let's take a little quick look at this short video. Okay, remember I said this is sort of more what it's not? I watched that and I was shocked. I was like, that is a showman if I've ever seen one.
Right. Did they put that together with that music and the color and everything?
One of the guys that's his big fan, I guess, it's on YouTube. The guy's got a channel and he did all that.
That was not helpful, was it?
No, it was not. However, I have a reason for showing that. Because I want to let people know, some people think of the movies that they see. Other people say, well, this is religious. This was Christian. This is a Christian man. And so this must be real. Now, I have no idea what's really going on when he's doing all this. I don't know, and I don't care to know. I just know he's just doing some pretty weird stuff that really is not in the Word of God. Right. Nothing to do with the Word of God. The Word of God is called the sword of the Spirit. God never said to stab somebody with it. He stabbed the guy in the back with it. Did you see him do that? He said, I thrust you through with the... It's figurative. As it's a weapon, a spiritual weapon. It's not a physical weapon. He hit the guy with the head with the Bible. Did you see that? Now that's probably happened to some of you when you were little, when you were in church and you got in trouble, but that's a whole different story.
Bible thumper?
Bible thumper, yeah. All new meaning to the word Bible thumper. Now, I'm not saying I haven't seen things like this, but it was when I was a high school teacher, so had nothing to do. That was supposed to be funny.
Not so much, though.
Obviously, you guys have never taught high school. Been around teenagers, you've probably seen some of that stuff coming at you. Like, what in the heck? I think they call it hormones. But anyway, just my take on it. So I wanted to show you that because if you just got on the internet and you typed in exorcism or you searched for casting out demons, demonic oppression, possession, you're going to get some really crazy stuff come up. It's important that you don't just believe everything that you see or that you read. Now there are people who won't read much, but they'll get on YouTube and look at a video like that, and when they do, they'll be all freaked out. And they'll do one of two things. More than likely they'll be, if they believe it, they're going to say, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. That stuff is just weird and wacky and out there. Again, I don't know what the man's reasoning for doing anything of that is. I do know that I went to his website and you can give, you can donate to his ministry. So I don't know much about the man, but when you see people doing things for notoriety and profit. Did you notice at the beginning when he did something with the cross, he turned and walked away from the guy? Did you see that look on his face?
Yeah.
It's kind of a smug look, like, look at me, look what I can do.
It was showmanship.
Showmanship, exactly. It's like P.T. Barnum. There's always going to be people out there that are going to do stuff like that. But I want you to know that if a person really has spirits in them and they get cast out, it is nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. So again, be careful about what you watch on the internet or what you look up and what you find. Be sure that, even what I say, be sure that it's grounded in the Word of God. Because if it's not, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Maybe you need to throw it out. But if it doesn't, if it goes against the Word of God, you definitely need to throw it out. But I spent a lot of time studying this, and I know it's kind of strange for some. You got a lot of time, extra time on your hands. Why would you study all this? Well, I feel like this was something that God has called us to this ministry, and not that ministry, but of helping people with that sort of thing. And in doing so, I remember back to a time just after college. I got a job at Kansas City at KU Med Center, and I had been a biology major, and I worked for a scientist. He was a scientist who did, what did he work on? He studied the kidneys and the effect of hypertension on the kidneys, or high blood pressure on the kidneys. I had some crazy stories from that, but I'll save that for another day. But he told me one time, he said, I'm going to make you an expert on whatever, a certain thing. And I said, what do you mean you're going to make me an expert on it? I'm just a fresh kid out of college. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, really to be an expert, all you have to do is read up everything that you can find on the literature, so now you know everything everyone else knows. And then you just dig a little deeper and you find out a couple more things, one or two more things, and now you are the world expert on that. So that's always kind of stuck with me. So it's been important to me to really dig in the Word and everything and do a lot of research so that I know what I'm talking about. Do I think I'm a world-renowned expert on this? No. But can I say I've done my homework on it? Yes. My wife can attest to that, correct? Yes.
Every day.
Every day. Oh, man, it's so good to have you in here. I like that. So, any comments on that?
I wonder what would have been like without the special effects to it,
Oh, there's other videos without special effects you can look. It's just about as bad.
Really.
A lot of showmanship. He has taken people and he wouldn't say he pushed them down, but he takes them and he shoves them down, and then he'll say, pick him back up. And he'll have 3 or 4 guys get him. It makes it look like the guy's out of control, like the guy in the Gadarenes that it talks about in the Gospels. It's just very, very much showmanship, for lack of a better term. So, did you see anything that didn't you could see absolutely was not biblical?
Well, using the crucifix in the way that he did. I mean,
Right.
that's right out of Hollywood. I mean,
Exactly.
That's not appropriate. And the other thing is that I believe that when you are casting out devils, that there is no reason to harm the dignity of the person that you're doing it to,
Right.
or for.
Right.
Know.
Nor will the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit won't do that. Now, sometimes people do have a reaction when something happens. That happened when Jesus cast out devils. Sometimes
Right.
a man might be thrown down or something like that. But there's no reason to make sport of people. That's not the will of God.
Right. And there was no reason for him to, everywhere he goes and does this, to have a camera following him around
Right.
and a microphone
Right.
and saying something to them and then having them say something in the microphone. That is, it's like you said,
It's showmanship.
it's showmanship, and it's disrespectful to the people
Yeah,
involved.
it is.
And I feel sorry for them because more than likely they probably really did have some issue of some sort, and that's why they came to him, and then they left thinking they were okay and they weren't, because it's just showmanship. Kind of reminds me of the 7 Sons of Sceva that went in, except he hasn't got beat up yet, but it may come, you never know, maybe one of these days. So let's go back to last week. I think I was mentioning about one of the last things I talked about was the term or the phrase persons without bodies. Do you remember why I talked about that? Why would I like to refer to or refer to demons as persons without bodies? Kind of helps you paint a mental picture, but of demons, because demons aren't just some negative black energy field out there. They actually have personalities, and they actually have a will. I mean, we know they have a will. How do we know demons have a will? Biblically, how do we know that demons have a will? They used to be in heaven.
They rebelled.
chose to follow.
They rebelled and chose to follow Lucifer. And that's why they're in the position that they're in now. And people might ask the question, was it possible that a demon changes his mind and gets saved? No. They have made their choice. They are so deep with such hatred toward their Creator, there's no way they would ever change their mind. The reason I mention persons without bodies like I said, it was to get you guys thinking of them more like not a ghost, because we talked about that they are not ghosts. Once a person dies, they do not come back. They don't go away and float around because there was something unfinished in their life that had to be done, or whatever other sort of tales that people will tell you. If you see a ghost, what is it?
Demon.
A demon. If it's not a hallucination, but if it's actually there, it would be demonic. And you may not know it today, but you would eventually know it, because it would eventually let itself be known. But they have personalities, and they're not all alike. They're not all the same rank. They don't have the same personalities. Just like we have 3 children, all of our 3 children, they're not demons, but there were a few days we neglected them. But they don't have, their personalities are not alike. We had one that had a personality super outgoing, we had one that was super introverted, and we had one in between, in the middle. So just like we produce 3 children, and those children have different personalities, these were all created beings, and they all have different personalities as well. So, any question about the persons without bodies idea? Just please don't think of them as ghosts, because they're not ghosts. They're definitely part of the kingdom of darkness.
It explains one of the reasons why they want to get in people, so they can find an outlet to manifest.
You mean why they would
Why they want
masquerade as a ghost?
No, I mean
Oh.
why they want to attach to people, because they don't have a body.
Exactly, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I'm glad
when
you brought that up.
attach, then they can do things.
Right. If you were a spirit just floating around and you wanted to do something, if you want, and in their case, it's something bad, something harmful, something violent, something sinful. If you're a spirit of adultery, how are you going to commit adultery if you don't have a body? You can float around all you want, but it just isn't going to happen. But you can, if you are attached to a person or inside of a person, then you can benefit from the body. Or if you wanted to attack somebody, hurt somebody, how could you do that? They don't have any power of their own as far as physical power, but they can be inside of someone else and cause that person to do something, right, to hurt someone, so on. So there's a lot of reasons why, also because that's what they're here for. They are here to come between you and God. That's probably their most basic thing that they're here to do. But they're here to kill, steal, and destroy. So even if they weren't here to separate you from God, they would still enjoy toying with you and torturing you. I think I told this story before in another class that I taught. But when I was young, my mother and father had some friends, and we would go over and visit them. I had an older sister. These people had an older girl and a younger boy. The boy was a couple, 3 years older than I was, and he would torment me like you would not believe. And he would just torment me any way he could think of, just to irritate me. And I would get so mad, I would just yell at him. I was just so angry. Until finally one day, it was literally a figurative way, I guess, a way of showing would, if you've ever seen in the old movies or whatever, you got a bigger person and a littler person, and the little person comes at them, and the big person just puts their hand out and holds them by the forehead, and the one's just swinging away, and the other one's just laughing because they're holding away. I was the one swinging. So the other kid was the one that constantly did that to me. And one day I just had a frustration. I said, "Why do you do that to me?" And he said, "Because I think it's funny to see you get mad." And when that clicked, I just shut my mouth and didn't say another word, and I pondered it. The more I pondered it, I tell people I don't like to lose. I didn't like to lose. So I said, in my mind, I said, he will never, ever make me mad again. He will never cause me to act out in anger again. Now, did I get mad? Yes, but I controlled my anger because I didn't want him to see it. And you know how long it took him to leave me alone? Not too many times. He tried a few times, then he got bored. So sometimes it's just in the nature. Have you heard the story of, it's an old fable, I believe, but of the frog and the scorpion? And they're on the side of the stream or the river. And the scorpion says, "I need to get to the other side, but I can't swim." So he goes up to the frog and he says to the frog, "Can I ride on your back? Will you swim across so that I can get to the other side?" And the frog said, No way. You're a scorpion. You have a stinger. You could sting me and kill me." And the scorpion said, "Well, you're right, but I really want to get to the other side. So think about this. If I was to sting you, you're going to die and drown, and then we're both going to drown. So I would lose out, right?" Didn't think about it that way. So the frog thinks about it and he says, "That makes good sense." So they start swimming and they're going out there. Get out in the very middle, and the scorpion stings him. And as he's dying, out of surprise, and he's about to die, The frog looks at the scorpion and said, I don't understand it. You did this and we're both going to die. Why? I just don't get it. Why did you do that? And the scorpion looked at him and said, it's in my nature. And that's how demons are. It's in their nature to be destructive, to be tormenting. Doesn't necessarily matter what they're going to get out of it. It's almost like they just can't resist doing that. All right, I want to read to you a quote because we've talked about from the video, we talked about what demonic oppression is not. I want to read to you something that I deem as modern day demonic oppression. Just one example. It's out there all the time. And the more I do this, the more I see it and recognize it. But after I read through this, I want to talk a little bit about how we know that it's, how we can recognize it as demonic oppression. But before I do, one of the reasons we want to do this is when we read 2 Corinthians 2:11, it says, so that no advantage will be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes. Now, I think most of us are ignorant of his schemes. We know kind of some of the stuff he does, but we just really don't know the nuts and bolts of what he does in his everyday life with his army and with these demons that affect people. And that's part of the reason I thought it was important to teach this topic. So if you want to do what I normally tell you to do, you read above and below the verse. So if you go home and you read this, you're going to say, well, he's kind of using that out of context, so I'm going to go ahead and address that right now. When Paul's talking about it, he's talking about a specific strategy about forgiveness. He says, whoever you guys forgive, and he's speaking to the church at Corinth, he said, if you guys forgive somebody, I'll forgive them. Mm-hmm. And he said, then he goes on to say that, so that no advantage will be taken of us by Satan, for we're not ignorant of his schemes. So he was speaking in that term, in that exact instance, he was speaking specifically about a certain way a certain scheme that the enemy had, which was to plant unforgiveness, distrust, things like that in there. But it said we will not be ignorant of his schemes, and that's a plural. So we know that he has a lot of different schemes. So it's important that we start to understand what some of the schemes are. So where did I get this quote? It's about 3 quotes, I think, from the same person. And I happen to get them off a blog because I find I can mine all sorts of rich stuff out of blogs. There are a lot of people out there with blogs, and they write about everything. And when you get to things like mental health, there are people out there who have mental health issues, and they blog, and they talk, and they're trying to get it out because it's therapeutic for them, and it makes them feel better. So I'm going to give you an example here. This is the quote, the first part of it. For as long as I can remember, I've struggled with depression. There were plenty of times, especially in my teen years and my 20s, when I considered suicide. There were times when it was all I could think about for days. Researching, planning, yet somehow I made it through relatively unharmed. There are plenty of instances where self-harm was my therapy. I want to stop there because that's the end of that first quote. Do you know anybody, have you ever talked to anybody who said anything to you like that? Yeah, especially if you've been in counseling yet. You may have heard it, but most people aren't going to say that out loud. As a matter of fact, when it gets down here, it talks about, the person mentions how they have feelings inside that they've not let out to anybody because they don't feel like it's safe. So my point is, there's a lot of stuff out there. Probably the person doing this blog, probably most of their friends don't know that they're dealing with the things that they're dealing with to the extent that they are. The second quote says, now in my early 30s, it felt as though my life had spiraled out of control. Once again, as though I was losing my mind. Extreme episodes of overwhelming negative emotions became more frequent. At other times, I felt that nothing mattered anyway. So what if I lose my mind? So what if I don't exist anymore? I knew if I didn't do something about this once and for all, I might not make it through this time. Next quote. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I've been carrying the sadness alone for a while, and it's been fine. I've been okay. But now I would love to have someone to reach a hand out to me and to walk through this with me. I don't want to do this alone anymore. I'm so tired. I've been getting through a few things, and I haven't told anyone I'm struggling with. I feel quiet and withdrawn. I can't seem to reach out even though I want to. And no one can see what I'm going through. I'm still good at hiding my deepest and truest feelings. I can't seem to speak out. I can't even write about it here on this blog, the one place that I can be completely open and honest. There are moments when the sadness is so great that even when you're being verbally attacked, all you can do is just stand there unable to move. The words seem to float over you and disappear into nothingness. There's no more space for any more sadness. That's where I am. I'm hurting and wish somebody could see through me and hear my silent cry for love and care. Someone who will look deeply into my eyes and really notice me. But how can they when I'm hiding? There's a hole inside of me that I can't fill myself, no matter how hard I try. Now, if you look at that in the context of the world, which is how this person's looking at it, they're not looking at it spiritually at all. But isn't that a sad case? And it's probably way, way, way more common with people than we even have a clue. Because this person was having trouble even writing it anonymously. Yet, they were dealing with it in their life. So, I want to bring out a few thoughts. I'm going to go back to the first quote. And I'm going to stop each part. I sort of made this like an amplified Bible. I put my own little thing in parentheses afterwards, or in quote, or parentheses afterwards. So he says, for as long as I can remember, I've struggled, and I stopped there. Remember the scripture says, we wrestle not with flesh and blood. Right? So this is how I'm going to bring it around to the spiritual side. So for as long as I can remember, I struggled with depression. Now, what would depression serve to do? It steals joy, and it's the opposite of joy. So, what were the three commands? What are the three important things, or most important things that Satan and his kingdom wants to accomplish? Kill, steal, and destroy. So here's an example of them trying to steal. They're going to try to steal his joy. We also know that depression, being the opposite of joy, if you will, in some form or fashion, joy comes from the Lord. Everything, you read the word, look up the word joy in your Bible and you find it everywhere in relation to God. So the opposite of that, as I said, the demons and Satan all have the opposite characteristics that God has. Next sentence says, there were plenty of times, and I stopped and said frequent attacks, which is common. If somebody is being oppressed, they have frequent attacks. Demons may sit back and they may let you alone for a little while, but not very long. As a matter of fact, they tend to get worse and worse and worse and worse over time. Now, one of the maybe the second or third person we helped, I felt like God took me to that person and asked them, or I kind of explained what I thought might be going on and that their problem might be demonic oppression. And this person politely listened to me, and inside their head it was going, so one of the things I said was, that because this person was dealing with depression, and she said, well, you know what? I was just in so-and-so's class, and our church thing, and had some people pray for me, and I'm feeling much better now. I'm feeling a lot better. And I said, you know what? I rejoice with you that you're feeling better, and I hope and pray that it sticks. But I said, I'm going to tell you that I believe that if the cause, or I know that if the cause is what I'm thinking it is, which it may or may not be, but if it is, here's what's going to happen. You're going to crash, and you're going to crash hard. It's going to come back, and it's going to be worse than it was before. And that person went, and it's funny because I was talking about what you can look up on the internet. That person, and I found out all this later after I talked to her. She said, I went home after I talked to you, thought that was crazy, and she said, so I started looking up this stuff on the internet, and she said, everything that I found on the internet was just reinforcing what you had just told me. It was explaining things the same way. Now, if you got on and you start research on the internet, you would find that very few things will back up what I'm saying. Most of them will say all kinds of things, you know, you can't be oppressed if you're a Christian, and yada yada, and on and on. So the fact that she came across those things first, was a miracle in itself. Mm-hmm. Then when it came back and hit her so hard, she remembered what I had said, and she said, you know what, there might be some truth to this. So she messaged me, and she said, can we meet? And so we met, and we got rid of what was bothering her. And so it changed her in quite a very amazing way, actually. I won't say it changed her personality, but she was a very introverted individual, and since then she's been changed quite often. Quite not often, quite dramatically, yes, thank you. I actually had her come in our class one time and give her testimony because she agreed to do that. So, which was interesting because I found out some things that I didn't know. Some things that she was thinking or whatever about that I didn't know. So, at any rate, so the attacks are frequent. This person said, especially in my teen years and my 20s. Well, when you're at your most vulnerable and you're most insecure, like your teen years, in your early 20s, you don't know who you are, trying to figure out who you are as an adult, you're more vulnerable to a lot of different things, a lot of different hurts, and so on and so forth. I found out the other day, at our school, at our junior high and our high school, for the first time this year, we implemented a policy that there will be no cell phones during class, during school. And I thought it was a great idea, but occasionally you learn something you didn't expect to learn. And one thing I learned was that some of the junior high kids in particular came up to the principal and the teachers and said, "We are so relieved." And I thought, that's weird because they're like connected. They can't hardly, it's like an umbilical cord. They can't let go of it. Why do you think, you have any clue? I know I had no clue why they would have been relieved. You know why they were relieved?
Tired to get in Texas?
No?
Social bashing or bullying.
Yeah, because they said, we are scared to do anything out on the playground or in class or anything. We withdraw inside of ourselves because if we do something just being silly and goofing around, somebody's going to video it and they're going to put it on social media and then we're going to get made fun of because they will be cruel and make fun of us. And I never thought of that. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I did not know that. But so I'm glad that they had that, and there's a reason I brought that up. What was it? Oh, because of how vulnerable they are at that moment. So like if somebody was to videotape me and I was doing something stupid and they put it on social media, I wouldn't be thrilled, but it's not gonna devastate me and I'm not gonna think my whole world is ending. But when I was 13 or 12, that was a whole different story. Not a good story either, by the way. We won't go there. So this person said when they were in their teen years or 20s, I considered, so after considered I put, that's part of their will. And the will is part of your soul. Your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. So if they're considering it, they're thinking about their will is involved. So what I'm getting at is there was a demon, this person has a demon inside and it's affecting their soul and their soul. And they were considering suicide. Suicide, kill, steal, destroy. I mentioned this the other day. Killing. It's got ramifications beyond that as well, but at the root, it's killing. There were times that it was all I could think about for days. That's another trait of demonic oppression. It can get on you and just not let you go. You just feel like you've been turned every which way but loose. So, it couldn't think about it for days. It couldn't stop thinking about it for days. That's going on in the mind, which is part of the soul, the mind, will, and emotions. They went to the point of researching and planning their own demise. It says, yet somehow I made it through relatively unharmed. Well, I have a good idea of how they made it through unharmed. I think the hand of God was probably on it. That would be my guess. But they don't recognize that, at least at this point. Hopefully someday they will. They said there were plenty of instances where self-harm was my therapy. Kill, steal, destroy. Self-harm is destroying. Destroying not just your body and your skin or whatever, but destroying a lot of different things in your life. Now in my early 30s, it felt as though my life had spiraled out of control. Again, once demonic forces get in there, they make you feel like you've just lost control. Because it's kind of like if you've ever been driving and if you had a little, well, not nowadays you got your kids strapped in, but when I was a kid, kids just ran all over inside the car or whatever. But if the kid kept pulling the wheel, you're trying to drive and they're like yanking the wheel, and you're fighting to keep kind of control of your life, that's kind of what they were feeling like, this person. And it says, once again, it felt as though I was losing my mind. Well, it's easy to feel like you're losing your mind when you have thoughts racing through your mind, especially when you think it's your thoughts and that the thoughts originate with you. When in reality, the Spirit's in there saying, blah, 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 and they're saying this and that and the other thing. And you're taking those thoughts and assuming, especially if you don't believe that there could be anything in there, well, then it must just be me, right? So if you're having those thoughts, then your natural inclination is to believe that you might be losing your mind. So the next part says extreme episodes of overwhelming negative emotions. Well, negative, that doesn't come from God, right? Things from God are positive, things from the enemy are negative. Overwhelming, the enemy tries to overwhelm us frequently in situations of oppression. It's also extreme, so they had very extreme episodes. So when this person had a bad day, they had a really, really bad day. Things were just like you couldn't even imagine. So negative emotions, remember the soul, mind, will, and emotions. And it became more frequent. We talked about that too. At other times it says, I felt, that's part of your emotions, which is part of your soul, that nothing mattered anyway. That's hopelessness and despair. And demons love to minister hopelessness and despair to people. They don't want you to have hope at all. It says, so what if I lose my mind? So what if I don't exist anymore? Those are thoughts that came into that person's head through a demon. That was not their natural thoughts. We talked about this before. Nobody, we are all at the core, we want to survive no matter what. You have the will to survive. And like I said before, if you were hanging with your fingers off of a 100-story building, and I came and said, just let go. You couldn't let go because every fiber of your being wants to hang on and survive because that's the way we're made. So when you're having thoughts that I shouldn't be here anymore, that's not coming from you. It's coming from demons. This person now, this kind of shift here for a second. Says, I don't want to feel this way anymore. This person knows that this is a bad feeling. They don't know what's causing it, but they don't want to feel that way anymore. I've been carrying this sadness alone for a while. Why do you think demons would want you to keep things to yourself when you're having issues?
They don't want to be found out.
You can't get help. And what is it about, when you walk into a church, for example, this is a perfect example. Say you're visiting a church for the first time. You walk in and you look around and you see all these people nicely dressed and they're smiling and they're shaking hands. And you look at them and go, man, they've got it all together. I hope they don't see through me, see past my mask and see what a mess my life is. And because of that, I'll never tell, I'm not saying I will, but in general you say, I can't let that out. I can't let anybody know what my life's like, what a mess it is. And so what you don't realize is those 100 other people that you're looking at thinking they're perfect, they're looking at you thinking you're perfect, and they're the one that's all screwed up. Mm-hmm. When in reality, probably most everybody there is screwed up in some form or fashion. We use the term, what's the term that we use for a family that's not dysfunctional? Thank you. So really, I don't know that there is such a thing as a functional family. Everybody's dysfunctional in some form or another. But yet, we always are afraid we're the black sheep, we're the one out there on the fringes. In reality, you're not. Because if everybody just said, if I gave, what was it, sodium pentothal, what's the truth serum? If I gave that to everybody in here and said, okay, let's talk about your life, you'd be like, mine's not so bad. I didn't realize it was, I've got a bad one. These people they got it as bad as I do. So, person doesn't want to feel that way anymore. They've been carrying the sadness alone for a while. They said, and it's been fine, and I've been okay. That's another thing that you'll hear from people. It's okay. So when you find out about it, you go up to somebody and you say, I'm so sorry to hear what you've been going through. And they'll be like, well, it's okay. It's not that bad. It's not that big a deal. Why do people do that?
Because it's a norm for them.
It's a norm for them? And so in a way, they get kind of numb to it?
Yeah.
And also, do you think it's a little bit to push people away?
Absolutely.
Don't worry about it.
Right. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. In our ministry, I've been told that on numerous occasions. Well, I'll have a situation where we're going to meet with somebody. And they come up, that's okay. Never mind. I'm fine. It's not that big a deal. So it says, but now I would love to have someone to reach a hand out to me and walk through this with me. But you know what? No one's going to because nobody knows about it. Mm-hmm. So we need to keep our eyes and ears open and pay close attention to what's going on with people around us. And if you sense something's going on, it's okay to hold somebody's feet to the fire and say, I will be totally confidential, but you can talk to me and it's okay because we can work through this together. Mm-hmm. And the person says, I don't want to do this alone anymore and I'm so tired. That's the other thing. It's just they're carrying this huge burden around. And Jesus says, my burden's easy and my are light and my yoke is, I didn't say.
Easy. Burden's easy, yoke is light.
Burden's easy, my yoke is light. Thank you. I was hoping I had some Bible scholars here, and I can't remember what I'm talking about. So this person goes on to say, I've been going through a few things I haven't told anyone. So there's still, even what they've let out online, on the blog, they still kept some stuff back. They're struggling with. So they understand they're struggling, they don't know what they're struggling against. They think they're struggling against chemicals, imbalance in the brain, or just thoughts that seem to invade them that they can't get away from, that sort of thing. And you know what? If you go your whole life that way, through your whole life, you're never going to quite beat the thing. Does that make sense? It's not until, you know, if you have a tumor growing inside you, it doesn't matter if you wear nice clothes so nobody sees and notices that you have a tumor, or if you smile a lot, no one notices you have a tumor. You can do whatever you want, but that tumor is just going to continue to eat away at you, and probably going to grow and grow. And demonic activity is a lot the same.
Can I make an observation?
Yes, ma'am.
I think also this has been true for me when the Lord is wanting to bring me through something, that the oppression that's against you will make you feel like you're already so tired of fighting. The idea of now stepping up and getting help, it's like, well, that'll do me in. I can't even go there, and no one would understand anyway.
Right.
And so there's this threat that, look, you're hanging on by a thread. You can't take on one more thing. It's like work,
Right.
almost. And it causes people to just feel like, yeah, I might as well just hunker down, you know.
Exactly. And in reality, that's a lie.
It's a lot.
Because the enemy knows that if they can keep you from moving forward and getting the help that you need to get free, then they're at home free. They love where they live. You're their house. They enjoy it. They know we live in America. Nobody's even going to be looking for them, right? Because we don't have demons in America. They're just in those third world countries, or following this guy around with the ministry, apparently. But they're in third world countries and stuff, but that doesn't happen in the United States, right? Because we're way too educated. We know better, right? But it's interesting how many things, when you start realizing what demons do, and then you start looking at things that are unrelated, seemingly unrelated to the religious stuff, like this person wrote. This person had no idea that I could look at this and go, well, let's see, right here, so I can see you're demonically oppressed because of this. Matter of fact, they don't know I'm using this. That's okay. But it made me very sad when I read this, because they talked about needing somebody, wanting somebody to see through them and to hear their silent cry for love and care. Now, that's part of the reason some of these people post this stuff, is so that other people can comment and say, I'm with you, brother, I'm with you, sister, this is tough, and I know what you're going through, I'm going through the same thing. But it ends up being encouragement, the blind leading the blind, if you will. The blind encouraging the blind.
I'm not alone.
Right, I'm not alone. And people love it. That makes them feel better. But sometimes making you feel better isn't good. Have you ever had a fever, been sick with a fever, and all you want to do is just lay down and sleep? Mm-hmm. Me and my wife had this discussion on occasion. We have for years. When I get a fever, she's like, go take some Tylenol or some ibuprofen. And I'm like, nope, not going to do it. Right here, every day, right? And my reasoning is because, like I said, I have a science background. There's a reason for a fever. The fever is there to elevate your body temperature, to start killing off the antigen, the things, the disease-causing agents in your body. And so what you really need to do is you just need to lay down and go to sleep and let all your energy go into killing the bacteria or the virus or whatever's in your body. Now, that's my take on it. My wife is like, quit your whining and take this. And that way I don't have to listen to you. But the same thing can happen. Well, let me go further. So if I take the Tylenol, now I feel good. So now what do? I go out and I work in the yard and I do this and that. And I'm spending all my energy, taking away the energy that should be used fighting this sickness. And instead, I'm doing it because I feel fine. So there are times demons do the same thing. They're like, you know what? They're at the end of their rope. They can't take it anymore. I'm just going to back off for just a little bit. Yeah, I feel better. I'm doing a little better. Yeah, I'll be all right. So I'll just continue with my life, and I'll just forget that I was even thinking about the fact that this could be a spiritual problem, and we'll just move forward and life will be good. The last thing the person said was, there's a hole inside me that I can't fill myself no matter how hard I try. Wow, you couldn't have said that better if you were a Christian as about Christ, right?
That's true.
We have, as humans, we have a hole in our heart that's so big that we spend most of our time in one way or another trying to make ourselves happy and to fill that void in our life. And this person actually stated it out loud, and they don't even know what they're saying. But they can't fill it themselves, and they said it, and that's a true statement. They cannot fill it themselves. Jesus is the only thing that can fill that hole, no matter what. It doesn't. It's not. They don't have to meet the right person. It doesn't have to be. They don't have to have lots of money, so on and so forth. So I thought that was interesting that they said that the way they did. All right. So, any questions? Other than why are you leaving? No, just kidding. Go ahead.
You really want to know?
No. That reminds me of another story that I really can't tell in here that happened when I was teaching. Just suffice it to say, we had a student teacher and he was very stubborn, and there was a girl in class who was also very stubborn, and we warned him, be careful what you do, and he didn't. And so a girl asked if she could go to the restroom, and he told her no. And she asked him again, and he said, if it's so important to you, why don't you tell me what's so important, why you have to go to the restroom? And she did, and she laid it out in very vivid terms. I laughed, but not in front of the kids, but it was funny. I was like, I could have told you that was coming, pal. Student teachers, they're fun. Actually it was the same, no, it was a different one. I walked out, and I had a student teacher one time, I shouldn't have walked out. And I walked back in, I kid you not, this is what I heard when I opened the door and walked in. He said, we just need to take all those black people and put a rope around their neck and hang them. And I was like, excuse me, hold on. So, class, just sit, talk amongst yourselves. Could you please step outside?
Oh.
And I had that little talk with him, and I said, you know what, I can't tell you how to feel about certain things, but I'll tell you one thing, you cannot make a racist statement like that. That was wrong, and that will not fly, and we are not going to be having anything like that in this place.
Oh, he's not teaching them.
Yeah, he is.
That's a shame.
Yeah. It's in Vegas, though, if that counts. He's also dealing blackjack when he's not teaching. He's an interesting guy. Anyway, a little off track there, but, you know. You can't get enough good old teaching stories, I always say. Don't I? Every day. So let's look at, for a few moments, let's look at what the New Testament has to say about demons. So if you have your Bible, and if you don't, you're probably going to hell. Just kidding.
I'll see you there.
I'm pretty sure I saw a fleeting look on Nate's face like,
I always carry a Bible.
okay, all right, good man.
That's
right.
bad.
You notice I don't have mine with me? It's because I haven't cleaned off the blood after I thrust it through that one person on the video, if you didn't see the video. So, all right. I really enjoy having an electronic Bible because I can search it so much quicker than I can the other
Right.
So whatever works for you, the main thing is to be in the Word. So we're going to look at Matthew chapter 4. Is that where I want to start? Yeah. I'm going to kind of try to go in chronological order. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We missed you.
I feel better. Thank you.
Good. We talked about, never mind. We talked about a lot of stuff you don't want to know about. All right, so I have to do so much editing. I've got to just really stick to the subject. So this is a story, Matthew, it's just 2-3 verses. Matthew 4, 23, 25. Anybody ready for the fan? Is it just me?
I think it might be just you this time.
Really?
Honey,
Or because I'm up high.
if I don't need the fan, we don't need it.
If Connie needs it, we can put you right here. Put it right in
I'll
here.
stay in the back of the class.
Okay.
It's close to the door in the bathroom, so.
That's all right. We are here to meet your every need, so.
Well,
My
yeah,
Bible
I can
died.
face it towards you.
No,
All right, we'll be good. All right, Matthew 4, Matthew 4, 23 through 25. Matthew 4, 23 through 25. Matthew 4, 23 through 25. Thank you for laughing, by the way. Matthew 4, 23 through 25.
Okay, Pastor. I know, right?
I'm going to read it to you. So follow along if you can. If you know how to read.
Where's that?
Bazinga. Jesus was going throughout all Galilee, teaching their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness among the people. The news about him spread throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all who were ill, those suffering with various diseases and pains, demoniacs, epileptics, paralytics, and he healed them. Large crowds followed him from Galilee and Decapolis and Jerusalem and Judea and from beyond the Jordan. So isn't it interesting? Said that he was healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. So actually I got to thinking when I read that, why is it separated as every disease and every sickness? Why didn't they just say every kind of sickness or every kind of disease? Because they're sort of interchangeable. They're synonymous, right? Disease and sickness, kind of the same. So I got thinking maybe the reason, and again, this is my version. This is not Bible. I mean, it's from the Bible, but this is my interpretation of it. Is that maybe he was talking about physical and he was talking about mental. So maybe he's talking about mental health versus physical health or disease condition of either one. It says that they had heard about him. News had spread all throughout the region. They brought him all who were ill, suffering from various diseases and pains. So that pretty much covers any physical sickness. Demoniacs, so people who had demons, were not demon possessed. Have I ever got to explain to you yet why? I haven't explained it all yet why I don't believe anyone is ever demon possessed. We'll get to that. Demoniacs, epileptics, and paralytics, and he healed them. So it says, it goes through the whole list and it says he healed them. So he's considering casting out demons a form of healing. And in some cases, they're causing a physical ailment, a physical disease or problem, but not always. So in this case, there's healing to be found in your soul, in your mind, your will, your emotions as well. So in today's terms, and I have to be careful, I suppose, the way I say it. I think there's a lot of mental health concerns today that have their root in spiritual, not possession, but oppression. As a matter of fact, Portia was just reading last night, and I didn't pull it up, sorry. She found somebody had posted, and I'm just going to wing here, posted something. Okay, so you have the actual. Somebody posted a question. And normally, when you read Facebook, you might get a few little comments, and some of them you get, 10, 12, 15. This had probably hundreds or thousands. This thread just went on and on. People just kept talking about it. So if you have that screenshot, you just want to read what it says?
What the guy said?
What the guy said originally in the original post.
Okay, demonic possession or mental illness. I wonder how many people throughout history were diagnosed with the mental illness when it was really demonic possession. I wonder how many people were treated with powerful medicines when they should have been treated with the power of the cross.
Yeah, that's all he said. And that led to hundreds or thousands. I mean, it really hit a nerve because there was a lot. And she read just parts of it to me. We didn't read the whole list of every comment. But it's interesting. Everybody had an opinion. Some people said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Other people said, oh, that's exactly what it is. And some people said, well, it might be some of one, some of another. There were only two people in that whole thing that said that I used to have that, and I was delivered from it. God delivered me. Jesus delivered me from it. And one lady, when she said that, another woman retorted and said, I think you just need to keep your opinions to yourself.
That's right.
I thought that's really interesting because the one who said that, keep your opinions to yourself, had just spewed her opinions just a few lines up. So what she's really saying was, I don't want to hear what you have to say because you're wrong and I'm right. What does that sound like? Oh, pride. Yeah. Sin of pride. That's interesting. Reminds me of a friend of mine had went to a holiness church once. I'm not picking on holiness, but they had a service where they stood up and gave a testimony, and a woman stood up and she said, "My testimony is that I thank the Lord that I don't sin." And I was like, that had been my last service there. I don't think I would have come back if the pastor didn't correct her on that. That's the height of pride, in my opinion. To think that you don't sin. Do I try not to sin? Absolutely.
Yes.
Do I mess up and miss the mark sometimes? Every day. Love to have that one around.
We do too.
You have no idea how much fun it is at my house. You really don't. So moving on. Back on the path. So there's only 3 verses there, but how he lumps in the demoniacs along with the various diseases, aches, pains, epileptics, and paralytics, I thought was pretty cool. What also is interesting is how people reacted in that day. And in another verse, especially like the very first time it's ever mentioned, I think it's in the book of Luke, but the very first time in Jesus' public ministry, when he's preaching, one of the first things he does is he casts a demon out of a man. And the man's in the synagogue, aka church in our terms. Nobody really made a big fuss. Nobody was surprised that there was one of their own sitting there that had demons in him. Nobody was surprised. So either they had a more keen sense of spirituality and know what was going on, or else that was just that one guy, he's kind of weird. I don't know. But I think that they really were a lot more accepting and a lot more knowledgeable. Kind of like if you're in a third world country now, they're not going to balk about it. They're saying, you say there's a demon and he's cast out, they'll be like, okay, sure. Kind of like when the man from India was talking, the missionary from India, and he said, those people just, you tell them that, there's a man, Jesus, that will heal them, and they're like, okay, let's do it.
That's awesome.
So, unfortunately, the people here, we don't see a lot of the miracles and the things, and it's for that reason. Because we just don't, either we don't believe it or we don't. All right, the next one I want to read is from Matthew chapter 8. 8, 5 through 13. Matthew 8, 5.
Why do you laugh?
I'm done now. All right. Matthew 8, 5. And when Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion, you guys are familiar with this story about the centurion's faith. A centurion came to him, imploring him and saying, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed. And if you're reading the King James, and this wasn't King James, so I try to use NASB because that's my favorite. But the King James uses the word palsy. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because the dictionary defines palsy as paralysis, especially that which is accompanied by involuntary tremors. Okay? So I think that's kind of important, and we'll talk more about that later. So the centurion came to him and said, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed, or with the palsy, at home, fearfully tormented. Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion said, Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. So I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and he does it. And now when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who were following, truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said to the centurion, go, it will be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. And I kind of continued because I wanted to get down to the very last part where he told him to go and it would be done as he had believed. That's the whole faith thing with people getting healed. Jesus, that happened over and over, and Jesus said, as your faith has made it, as you have stated it and you believed it, then it's so. Your faith has made you well. So to back up to the beginning of this, I might take on this, even though you don't see the word demon or evil spirit in here, right? So you're thinking, if I'm going through here looking for demons and evil spirits, why did I pull this verse out, which is Matthew 8:5? Why would I pull this out? Oh, I know, because I think there's a demon in there. Okay. Well, how do I think? Why do I think that? Well, if he has a palsy, it says he has paralysis, especially accompanied by involuntary tremors. Well, when it talks about the ones, the demoniacs in the Bible, it often talks about them having tremors or throwing them down or this or that or things like that. And it says he is at home fearfully tormented. Fear does not come from God. God does not give us the spirit of fear, but of love and a sound mind and all that. So fear comes from the enemy. And also the word torment. You never hear about God tormenting anyone.
Right.
So I wouldn't ever, if I had a disease or if I had a sickness, I would never say, I'm tormented by this. Right? Have you ever heard anyone say, I'm being tormented by this disease? So I think that it's a spirit that's causing this. Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. He didn't say, I'll go cast the spirit out. He said, I'll come and heal him. But Jesus also knew what the cause was, and Jesus knew that to heal him that he would have to cast it out. So there's a lot of things that are under the text that we don't, underneath it, that I don't think we're recognizing, that I just want to kind of pull out. But the centurion said, Lord, I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof, so just say the word and my servant will be healed. So you could say, well, Jesus could say, be healed, and the man's believing, the centurion's believing that his servant will be healed, right? So you say, okay, we're back to healing. We're not talking about spirit anymore. Well, if that's the case, then why does he say, for I'm a man under authority, and as a man under authority with soldiers under me, I say this one go, and he goes, and another come, and he comes, and if I say do this, and he does this. Jesus never approaches a sickness or disease like that. Jesus doesn't go, sickness, go. I don't, at least that I can recall. If you can find that in the scripture, maybe I'm wrong. But it's as if he's talking to a person without a body. Remember we're talking about persons without a body? So it's as if he's talking because these are persons without bodies, but they're also under authority. Whose authority are they under at the moment before Jesus ever steps into the picture? Whose authority would those evil spirits be under? Well, ultimately Satan, but then, down the line, if they're privates, like I said, like an army, then it might be a sergeant or a corporal or whatever might be over them. So Jesus has ultimate authority even over the kingdom of darkness. He doesn't utilize that authority all the time. He doesn't bring them into alignment and say, because Jesus could do that, or God could do that. He could say, all right now, every fallen angel, every demon, cease and desist, stop what you're doing, don't bother anybody anymore, don't cause havoc, don't get in the way of anybody in their relationship with the Father, and so on. But he chooses not to do that. It all has to do with the whole free will thing that we have. So, even though Jesus is greater, he doesn't always exert that authority over them. Does that make sense? Just like he could heal anybody, but he doesn't heal everybody. Because we talked about the lady with the issue of blood, and she came up against him, pressed up against him, and he said, the power went out of me, who touched me? Everyone else was touching him that needed healed, and they didn't get healed. So Jesus doesn't just heal everybody all the time or get rid of any kind of demons that come along. He does it selectively. And is it because he cares about some people more than others? No. What was it about this man that caused Jesus to tell him to go, it shall be done for you?
His faith.
It was his faith. So I think the man himself, the centurion, even realized that it was a spirit. And the reason I think he realized it is because he said, hey, you can just tell them to go, and they're going to go because they're under the authority, and I recognize you as the ultimate authority. So we read through that, and nobody ever even notices that there are demons or spirits involved, when really that's what the whole story is about. That and the fact that the man has such great faith compared to the sons of Israel. So, any question about that? I have a couple more things I think I should say about that. I have here, on a side note, the centurion, who was an important man of means because he was a soldier over probably 100 other soldiers. So he probably was wealthy and he certainly had influence. He could have easily brought the man to Jesus. So why didn't he bring the man to Jesus? Why would the centurion centurion walked himself to Jesus, but he could have had people carry the man on a stretcher, whatever, but he didn't.
He had faith that he could just say it and it would be done.
Right, because he truly understood Jesus' power, and he had faith that Jesus could do it without even seeing the man. So when Jesus even offered, Jesus said, I'll come to your house. And the guy's like, no, you don't have to do that. Because I understand how you can do it without it. You're so powerful, you don't even have to come to my house.
Well, he also said, I'm not worthy.
Right, and I'm not worthy.
I'm not worthy for you to come to my house.
But was he worthy?
That really wasn't the issue.
Right, but in Jesus' opinion, he was worthy, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the faith of,
Because Jesus made the offer. He said, I'll come to your house. So Jesus recognized, I think Jesus saw, I think Jesus probably sensed the man's faith before the man ever said it
Yes.
out loud.
Well, it's humility too.
And his humility, right. That's interesting because, well, it doesn't say it in this one. So almost all the time that people come to Jesus that are healed or whatever, first thing they do is fall down at his feet in a submissive pose, which, it would be interesting. Well, how would you react if you really wanted healing from something or freedom from something, and you went down to the front of the church when there was an altar call and you said, I need to be healed. Like you said, I've got this condition, I need to be healed. And the pastor said, okay, get down on your face right there. Lay on the floor with your face on the floor before God. How many people, out of 100 people in the church, how many do you think would do that instantly? Probably not very many.
I wrote 10.
So if 5 or 10 did it, who do you think would get healed?
5
The
times.
5 or 10 that did it. Why? Because they're humbling themselves before God. So if you didn't do that, that would be like telling God, well, that's asking a lot. You don't want people making fun of me. What if somebody's filming me and putting me on Facebook and social media and they're going to make fun of me?
Small price to pay for being healed.
That's right.
It is. But yet it gets in so many people's way
Yeah, it does.
of getting healed or set free. So, just something to think about. A couple other things I thought about this as I read it. Not only could he have brought him to Jesus, but he didn't think he had to. He left him at the house. And again, my mind was just kind of going everywhere on this, trying to figure out why he might have left him at the house. What if the man had agoraphobia? Do you know what that is? Do I have the right term?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're afraid to leave
Yep.
your familiar surroundings. So, how horrible would that be? How terrible would that be for that centurion to do that? So we're going to get you healed, but we're going to face your fears because we're going to drag you out of this crowd of people. No, he respected the man and he said, I'm going to leave you there. If the man had agoraphobia. Again, this is just me pondering and musing here.
Well, if he had the palsy and was desperately tormented at home, can you imagine what that trek would be like?
Yeah,
I
it'd
mean,
be
the
very
suffering
difficult.
would just be off the chart.
Right. And again, what about, how do you want to embarrass the man? He's shaking and carrying on as he's traveling. So even the centurion was
Had mercy,
compassionate
yeah.
and had mercy on him, right? So I think personally, agoraphobia is another one of those things I think falls under demonic oppression. Because people with agoraphobia they weren't born that way. And it didn't just happen one day. That it may have become more concrete one day, but things in their life sort of built up to that point.
Trauma.
And traumas, right? Exactly. Which traumas are open doors to spirits, which is one of the things I've learned on my trek to become an expert in this field. I thought that was fun. Feel free to laugh. Thank you, honey. All right.
I don't think this one's convinced back here. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you are consistent. Well, I can't use that one. Well,
Try to redirect me.
been there, done that. So what would have happened if Jesus would have said, I'm going to heal you of the palsy. I'm going to make it where you don't shake anymore, where you're not paralyzed anymore. But if Jesus didn't get rid of the root, the demon, what would it have What would that benefit the guy?
Wouldn't they come back?
It would have not benefited him anything at all, right? Because really, probably the mental anguish and torment would have been worse than any of the physical that he was dealing with. So it's interesting too that Jesus carried the ultimate authority with him, yet his own people, God's chosen people, the Israelites, didn't recognize it. Not only did they not recognize it, they pushed back against it, and they bucked hard against it. And the reason was because the religious leaders didn't want to lose their power. They didn't want to acknowledge that there was somebody more powerful than them. And, Jesus talked about how they walked there and they like to be the most important person and sit at the most important seat at a banquet, and how they wear the longest flowing robes or whatever. Anything to make them look like they were somebody really, really special. They liked that. And they didn't like the fact that this man who didn't go to school, get his master's divinity or whatever, doctorate, and all that, knew more than they did. And not only that, he spoke with authority. That's one of my favorite scriptures in the Gospels, is when it said the people were amazed that he spoke with authority, not like the scribes and Pharisees. So that tells you they just were like, rah, 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 but they heard Jesus and it was like, that man, that's authority right there. I think it's interesting that people caught on to that and didn't take them very long at all. Another time, let's go to Luke. No, let's don't. I was just kidding. Let's go to Matthew. Gotcha, you guys are all looking at Luke. Matthew chapter 8, verses 14 and 15. Matthew 8, 14, 15. And again, this is another one where it doesn't really talk about a demon, but I'm going to dig one out, because that's what I do, right? Dig out those demons. Matthew 8, 14. When Jesus came into Peter's home, now some of the versions say, because this is also in Mark and Luke, some of them say Simon's home. This is when he's just calling the disciples, so Peter doesn't really know him yet, or Simon doesn't know him. He's still called Simon at this point, but this one calls him Peter. When Jesus came into Peter's home, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick in bed with a fever. Now, maybe it's just me, but I think it's kind of interesting that that Peter didn't say, Jesus, my mother-in-law is sick, would you please heal her? Nobody wants to comment on that. Good. Instead, they walked in. She's laying aside with the fever. And Jesus saw her. It says he touched her hand and the fever left her, and she got up and waited on him. Now, you can look at that and go, oh, well, Jesus just did that so they'd have somebody to wait on him. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not. Jesus had compassion on her and he saw that she was sick. Jesus wouldn't have cared if she got up and didn't wait on them. It had nothing to do with her waiting on them. So he touched her hand and the fever left her and she got up and waited on them. Now, I wonder if Peter's feeling bad at this point, if he's going, maybe I should have said, hey, I brought Jesus, mother-in-law, I brought Jesus here to heal you. Because, she might have been like, when afterwards, Jesus left and was like, Peter, you were just thrown into the bus. You weren't even going to have him pray for me, were you? You weren't going to have him heal me. All right, again, I'm off on my own world there. Tangent.
Don't you think that when walking with Jesus, like on a pretty regular basis, people were sort of provoked, even the disciples, because they saw him do things that
Provoked in what way?
like, oh, I should have been tracking on that, and I was totally not even merciful or kind, or I was thinking, why do you talk to that woman? I mean, all the different things that he was breaking all the mores everywhere he went. It had to be very challenging. I mean, wonderful and glorious, but very challenging.
And it was because they were used to following the letter of the law, because that's what the Jews did. And so many times, and if you don't really understand what some of the Jewish law was, you don't understand how many times he did things that were so offensive. Right? To spit in the dirt and make mud and put in someone's eye, that's spittle. That's a bodily fluid, and that was a big no-no. That makes you religiously unclean. Nobody spits on you. Nobody puts any kind of bodily fluids on you. Right? You're not supposed to have any contact with blood. Yet the woman with the issue of blood was hemorrhaging, touched him, and he allowed that. There's so many different things that happen in their ministry. The leper, you absolutely, number one rule of health, you do not touch a leper, because you'll become physically unclean and you can get the disease and you will be be spiritually unclean, religiously unclean. Yet he touched lepers and he healed them. You were supposed to stay as far away from him as possible. As a matter of fact, when they saw you coming, they were supposed to yell, "Unclean, unclean," so that you would go, "Okay, we're going on around. We're not going to get anywhere near you because we don't want to have it." Or things where, they weren't supposed to touch corpses or have anything to do with dead bodies. And then he would make comments to the Pharisees like, you're nothing more than whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones. Oh, the steam would be shooting out their ears. We don't even know how much of a... So he did a lot of really provocative things, and I'm sure the disciples sometimes were like, "Hey, see how this is going to come out? We're in trouble now." So why do I think there was a demon involved? Is it because I just think there's a demon everywhere? Thank you, dear. My wife says no. All the rest of you are just looking at me. No, I don't think there's a demon under every rock. Here's why. Peter's mother-in-law was sick in bed with a fever. The fever was caused by, in my opinion, by a demon. The verbiage here supports the idea of a demonic cause of the fever, because if you notice the phrase, "the fever left her." Have you ever used that term in your whole life? Have you ever said, "Well, I was sick, but the fever left me, so I'm feeling a lot better"? No. You'll say the fever's gone, or my temperature went down. But he says the fever left her. That's how you would talk about an entity, a person without a body, if you will. It doesn't ever say that Jesus healed her of her sickness. Never. It just says he touched her hand, the fever left her, and she got up and obviously was well. Yet, when the fever left her, her sickness was suddenly no longer. So he wasn't being a human Tylenol pill or ibuprofen, right? Just taking away the fever. Because if the fever went away, when I take Tylenol and the fever goes away, I still got that virus inside of me that's causing it, right? So whatever it was went away. So when the fever left, so something must have left her body. And I don't think it was thousands or millions of virus ones. I think it was spirits, a demonic spirit that did that. You guys see where I'm going with that? Makes sense? All right. The method Jesus used to cast out demons was touch often. Sometimes he did it with a word, but it was often with touch. And he touched her hand. And as soon as he did, probably those demons, or that demon, it may have just been one, probably it was getting a little too hot in the kitchen. They wanted to get out. It was probably like, okay, I've had enough. I'm out of here. So he did that. And the result of her getting rid of that demon was to be healed. Afterwards, she got up and she was able to serve Jesus. Isn't that interesting? So the demon was keeping her from serving Jesus. And although we're looking at this as a kind of a parallel, if you will, that's what they do today. They can stop you from serving the Lord to the capacity that you need to be able to serve the Lord. Does that mean that you can't serve God if you have a demon? No. But there's things that are getting in your way, or can be getting in your way. So it must be about that time. All right, so we're going to stop after that, which was Matthew 8:14. Those of you keeping track. Are there any questions? Any comments?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you were talking about this fever and the fact that that fever was actually causing her to not minister to one of the most important men, even for people who didn't know who he was, in the city, was coming to the house.
Right.
So that we call that authentic provocation. So the authenticity of the Son of God provoked all kinds of things everywhere he went. For some, they fell at his feet and said, "Save me, heal me, deliver me." You know what I'm saying? There's the authenticity of this man as God always got the attention of spiritual beings, right?
Right.
And so I believe that with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, that what made them rise up in the way they did was not the same thing that caused the law keepers to think, now why is he doing that? Because I think they had demons. I think they had religious demons. And so when they heard him and saw him break laws, the demons in them rose up because he was authentic and they weren't.
Right.
And they were being exposed, you know what I'm saying?
True. And one thing I'd like to say in defense of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, not every one of them was like we always think of them as being.
Yeah, a bunch of them got saved.
A lot of them
Yeah.
accepted Jesus and got saved. I mean, look at Nicodemus.
Right.
There were a lot of them. Now, they were a little iffy about being public about it because they knew that it could ruin their life. I mean,
And it did.
it did, right? And in that day, Jesus, or the religion was not separable from the rest of their life like it is here in America. So if you were excommunicated from the church, so to speak, then that would be the end of your whole world, whole social life. So, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, you talk about, demonic oppression being with mental illness.
Mhm.
In that book, The Authority of the Believer by Kate Hagen, he says that anorexia is always demonic.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I absolutely agree. No reason for absolutely agreeing, but yeah, I think so too. And if you think about it, that fits the pattern. Anorexia fits the pattern because a person can look in a mirror and they can deny the truth. The truth is the girl could weigh 100 pounds. And she's skinny, I mean, skin and bones. But yet the lie, and that's the truth. The lie is, I'm fat, I'm just a whale, you know. And you think to yourself, how in the world can somebody believe something like that? Well, I could stand there all day and try to convince them that it's not going to happen. But if you got demonic spirits in there and they're telling you stuff over and over and over, it does. It happens. That's exactly what happens. And it very much is a spirit. So
Thank you for teaching.
let me pray over you guys real quick, and then we'll head out. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for these people that are willing to come to this class, and Lord, just continue to put a hunger and a thirst in each and every one of us for your word and for truth. Help us to develop a better sense of truth and lie so that we can recognize the truth and know the truth and have the truth so deep in us, ingrained in us, that it can't be pushed aside for a lie.
Yes, God.
And help us to sense lies when we see them or hear them in our head, and let us not let them take root in our life. And Lord, also help us to look at those around us and start to see, like the person that I read from the blog. Lord, let our eyes be open to people like that. And Lord, show us how to minister to those people.
God.
Because Lord, they're hurting. And Lord, you are the answer. I mean, there really is no, we can give them all sorts of medical help, but Lord, in the end, you and you alone have the answer. So Lord, we just ask that you put more compassion and mercy and grace in our hearts for the others, Lord. And if, Lord, we be that person, Lord, help us to have the courage to open up to somebody that can help us through,
Yes.
and that can help get rid of the things that are causing it. And Lord, let truth reign in the life of each and every person here. Lord, we give you praise and glory and honor, and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.